Hey folks, welcome back. So this week we are picking up where we left off last week. We still didn't get these last two runs of boards in at this end, so we're going to do that first off, get that closed up, and then we're going to use the rest of this stuff that we've got cut here and just continue on up as far as we can get on this side. Okay, another thing that we didn't get done last week was getting this final 2x4 on the end of this framed in window here. So one question that I've gotten multiple times, quite a few times actually, and I kind of keep on forgetting to address is why am I doing the siding before I do the floor up here in the loft area? So the reason I'm doing things kind of backwards with this is that as we're getting here into winter, that means that there's a higher likelihood of having less than optimal working conditions as far as the weather. So what I'm trying to do is get the siding on first, so that way the building will be kind of dried in, protected from wind, rain, snow, etc. And then once that is done, I can come through and I can start working on putting the floor in. That way, regardless of what the weather is outside, inside it'll be not too bad for working in. Okay, so we're gonna do another little project here, and this is something that I've wanted to work on for a while now, and that is that on the Woodland Mills sawmills, the sawdust comes straight out the end of the mill, and it actually can shoot out a good 10, 12, 14 feet out the end of the mill, so it's covering everything along that side in sawdust. What I would like to do is put a little chute on it so that it directs the sawdust more straight down, so that way it just creates this one little windrow of sawdust that can be easily scooped up, moved out of the way, instead of having it spread out all over the place. So in order to have a chute on here, it has to be kind of flexible because this front part here hinges around, so if you attach something to the front, it's got to be able to kind of flex when you're opening up this front cover here. So the idea that I came up with is to use an old rubber boot. Now this thing's cracked here along the sides, so it's not any good for that anymore, but you've got kind of a really flexible piece of material here, and it's long enough so that you could kind of bring it down. I thought, hey, this just might work. So we're going to give this a try, see if we think this will do the trick. So to test this out, before we kind of hook it on permanently, we're just going to give it a test run with some duct tape on it first, just to make sure I think it's going to work, and then we'll figure out some way to really hook it on well after we know that it's going to do what I want it to. Alright, well at least in theory, this ought to work pretty well. Another reason to have it flexible is so that if there's any like slab wood or anything down in this area, it'll just be able to bend over top of it instead of getting hung up on it. Okay, so next step is we're just about ready to start doing some milling. We don't have a whole lot of time left today, but we're gonna try kind of prepping this log right here. Now what do I mean by that? Well, as you can see right over here, we've got like a branch that was kind of split off there. The log itself is pretty close for fitting in there, so we're gonna have to knock off some of these little crotches and bumps and stuff off from here, kind of smooth it out a little bit more, and then I think it should fit in to the mill all right. Of course, I think I said that on the last one too, and that one was a real pain to do, but I think this should be okay if we can knock off some of these little bumps and stuff off from it. Alright, so since we got this guy all loaded up onto the mill and ready to go last night, today we can just start right off milling this thing down into some cans. This has got to be one of the nicest, biggest cants that I have ever milled. This thing is 21 by 21. It's got a little bit of wane on the corners, but it's not too bad really. And if that log had been even an inch bigger in diameter, it wouldn't have worked too well for trying to mill this thing. It was just perfect. After this last cut here, I rolled the mill back, shut it off because I wanted to show you guys my awesome cant. And so the mill was just sitting over there, and I hadn't grabbed the camera quite yet. I was looking at the cant, admiring it, looking at how nice it was, and it goes bang! And I opened up the mill cover and the band broke. While it was sitting there, the mill was off, wasn't cutting or anything, so apparently it was really close right at the end of that last cut. And then maybe as that band was cooling down a little bit or something and it contracted just a bit, it snapped it. So we got to go grab another band out of the log farmhouse over there. That's where they're being stored at the moment. Also, I just want to add in here real quick that the sawdust chute is actually working really well. It's making a nice little windrow right along through here of sawdust. It's not blowing out all over the place. And I also think that it's helping to kind of reduce the amount of sawdust that's just blowing around in the air, because it's just shooting it straight down onto the ground instead of spraying it all over the place. So I think it's actually making the whole area around here less dusty as well. Alright, so we actually skipped a day of filming yesterday. I was out here, but I was working on a different project, and that is a new and improved version of my taper siding jig, and it works off from the same principle, same kind of idea, except the main difference is that instead of doing one cant, you can do 3 cants side by side. I haven't tested it yet, but hopefully we'll do that tomorrow, and then I'll probably do that as a standalone video just on its own. So today what we're going to do is we are going to work on splitting this log here into some more cants. I think, like I mentioned before, we're going to have to do a little bit of chainsaw work on it first, knock a little bit off the sides so that way we can actually fit it onto the mill. Alright, so actually that went pretty well, and it turned out pretty decent too. It wasn't quite perfect. I didn't get my cuts matched up quite perfectly from the two sides, but they're pretty close, and I'll be able to get that all smoothed out with the sawmill. So I guess what we'll do is we'll throw this smaller section up there and see if we can mess around with that, get that squared down into a cant, and then we can start screwing around with this bigger one over here. Alright, that actually went pretty smooth. All things considered that we had to split the log in half and then mill it in sections, it went alright. I'm pretty happy with that. But now we have 6 cants over here that are ready to get milled up into siding. So I ended up spending another day or so working on my new jig to try and do 3 cants at once. So I didn't get anything else done on the sawmill building for this week. So I think next week's video will probably, hopefully, be the jig that I'm working on. Hopefully I'll have it wrapped up by then. That'll be next week's video, and then the week after we'll be back to working on doing some more of this, milling some up, hanging some siding, etc. So I think this video is going up a couple days before Christmas, so Merry Christmas to all you guys, and I will see you next week.